Well, I'm feeling golden tonight, boys, and I want all of y'all to stay. And I want all of y'all to stay gold too.
I'm feeling
old. Old and gold, but hopefully no mold, because mold will make you sick. Mold will make you sick. Yeah. Welcome to the show. I'm Evan Mead.
I'm Lyle Groniger. And we are joined today by... Who's it going to be, gentlemen? Who's going to be first? Who's going to say
Oh, no.
Cody's busting. He's ready to go.
I'm Cody.
Hey!
And I'm Josh, and at the end of this rainbow lies a bunch of golden oldies, as the song once said. If anyone gets that reference, good for you.
It honestly watch audience, you can't see, but on the camera, like it was like almost like a scene right out of a shot from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Like who would shoot first, like who draws first, or like more like Fistful of Dollars or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Standoff.
By the way,
spaghetti.
So,
spaghetti.
Speaking of which, so in case you didn't follow with my little joke about being gold, we're going to talk about the golden age of, well, what the hell else do we talk about on this show? Cinema.
We're
going to go
about music, video
music,
games,
life.
I mean, you think we've been doing this
long
for
time
like
ago?
years
Politics.
Yeah, we're an open-ended show.
Talked about books once.
By the way, not that this has to do with anything. This isn't a plug, but so I recently discovered that our friend Michael, who hopefully gets to be on this show again before we hang up the cape, hopefully. So he recommended a podcast to me called Smartless, and I had never heard about it until this week, but apparently Cody was introduced to it a year ago. And I'm really impressed. It's basically Will Arnett, Sean Hayes, and Jason Bateman host a weekly podcast, but their gimmick is they surprise each other with, like, the guest speaker. And the guest speakers are literally from all levels of fame, like, but, you know, I'd say, like, pretty high levels of fame. Like, if they can get the President of the United fucking States on their show, that's pretty big. Yeah. And like just get James Cameron, Steven Spielberg, and these conversations are great. Like, it's a good show. So, on with our little show.
Oh, I thought you were leading to something.
Well, no, like I said, not that this has to do with anything.
Shout out to Smartless. There you go.
Shout out to Smartless.
Yeah, their dynamic is great.
Bronco was telling me about this one podcast where it's like, it's called Guilty Pleasure or something. So these guys watch a movie, and they try to decide whether the movie is a pleasure, or it's guilty, or it's a guilty pleasure. And she was telling me, Lyle, you could have come up with that. I'm like, I know.
Well, didn't we? Correct me if I'm wrong, but something we have in the pipeline coming soon is kind of similar to what she's talking about. I mean, not really, but it's like, but hey, it's got some similarities to it. But hey, we don't want to give away too much. But anyways, that's cool.
We're finally gonna talk about movies that came out before we were born.
Again,
before our parents were born, to some extent.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but my some of the movies we're gonna talk about were movies that were made.
Unfortunately,
before
none of them are Babylon.
They were born before we were.
What?
None of them are Babylon.
Oh, okay, we're going that road. Okay, so just a little freaking so you got our audience doesn't understand the context. So apparently I've been comparing every fucking thing I see to this movie that I saw in January.
Oh no, that's not the context I was getting at. What I'm saying is Babylon itself is meant to be sort of a nod to, you know, what's considered the peak of that era of Hollywood, where everything.
Well, that's why I kept. Well, that's why I kept comparing a bunch of stuff from that time to Babylon, because Babylon is literally like the ultimate homage to this era of filmmaking. So, and by the way,
I think
like,
Singing in the Rain is a better homage, personally.
That's
fair. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Even the artist, really.
That's true. But yeah, so
or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood without the mac and cheese.
For those of you who haven't seen Babylon, the ending montage is literally like features every film ever made. I'm being literal, so
a couple, yeah.
Yeah, a couple. Yeah.
Who would like to start this gravy train of golden oldies and dusty old films?
I'll go.
Cody,
Hooray.
hang on for us, son.
All right. So we're picking 3, right?
Yeah, we're each picking more or less 3.
So I'll just quickly just do a bunch of name drops of some honorable mentionings. So actually, Evan, I recommend 1926's The General too. It's a Buster Keaton film.
Oh, that's a great pick.
Nice.
Well, I mean, this isn't my pick. This is just as
a general recommendation. Buster Keaton's one of those all-time great comedians.
Yeah, because you talked about how much you loved Unstoppable. Oh man, this is another kind of like train action film for its time. How they pulled off some of these stunts and camera work is just poof, it's beyond me. Oh my god.
Wow.
I think Lyle's seen this one. Metropolis.
Oh yes.
Inspiration
Beautiful
for Star
film.
Wars.
Right. Yep.
Beautiful film.
Yeah, it's a very like thought-provoking science fiction movie. Has anyone here seen?
Ahead of its time.
Has anyone here seen Bringing Up Baby?
I've heard of it.
No, I heard of it though.
Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. It's 1938. It's like a sweet little romantic comedy. Like she's hilarious in it, Katharine Hepburn. In fact, I have a feeling that like this is like her performance in that movie was like a probably a great inspiration on whoever created or maybe the performer of I Love Lucy, because there's a lot of Lucy. Ball? Yeah, there's a lot of like tendencies with that. I'm not kidding.
I guess I could see that.
I mean, it goes without saying, but The Wizard of Oz is.
Of course.
I mean, you want your gateway movie to be any like
to color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I mean,
unethical practices up the ass, but good movie.
I mean, I could.
Great movie.
It might dampen it a bit if you learn how the sausage is made, but as a film, it stood for this long for a reason.
Absolutely. And that same year, also one of the few directors of The Wizard of Oz also did Gone with the Wind. It was Victor Fleming.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. You know, it's a very epic movie in its production. I mean, when I first watched it in high school, and I watched it all within like 5 days, I kind of split everything up. I was shocked to find out that this was like 1939. It just looks so rich and so like timely.
Very colorful.
This isn't my one Hitchcock pick of the night. I'll get to that, but I will give a shout out to Rear Window.
Yes.
Holy shit, that one is so great. Have you seen it, Evan?
No, I haven't.
Oh, put it on your list. It's basically what's that Shia LaBeouf movie that came out? It was Disturbia. It's basically Disturbia ripped it off quite a bit, or modernized it.
Wow.
Or like that episode of the Simpsons.
80 years later.
Bard of Darkness.
Bard of Darkness.
Bard of Darkness. Yeah. Well, that's the whole movie's or that whole episode's referencing that movie. And that's kind of it for my honorable mentionings. So, all right, my first pick, 1933 is The Invisible Man.
Oh, that sounds great.
A Universal film.
Yeah, Universal monster movie.
Remember that.
It's directed by James Whale, who also did like Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein.
We'll talk about those later. But yes.
I think you and Lyle are on a similar sort of mind meld right now.
But this one,
be the first
it's different, where it's not creepy. It actually has like a kind of a light sense of humor to it, and it's super short. And I love Clyde Rains' performance in it, and the visual effects for its time is really like, it's like, I wouldn't say practical, but it's very like rudimentary kind of blue screen, green screen kind of effects on keying him out. But it's a very kind of like disturbing window on like how a madman just changes himself to just accidentally changes himself invisible, and he's trying to, at first he's trying to reverse the process, but then afterwards he just becomes obsessed with the idea that like he has so much power by just like basically being invisible. It's there in the title, and it goes to the media and all that, and it's so wonderful. Have you guys seen this?
I have. You recommended it to me.
But it wasn't it remade like with Elizabeth Moss?
Yeah.
Or am I thinking of something else?
It's actually a solid remake. Yeah.
Oh, that's what.
Cool.
Because I was thinking, for whatever reason, when there was that Hollow Man movie with Kevin Bacon,
I was just about to
it's
say
not
Hollow
an exact
Man.
remake, but there are elements of it, granted more of a horror twist, but similar premise.
Yeah, I haven't seen
That movie
Hollow Man,
freaked me out.
but I've heard not so good things about it.
It just what came to
scared me
mind.
as a kid. Yeah.
It's actually funny. Gloria Stewart, who played Old Rose from Titanic, is in this, and she's super young.
Nice.
Yeah,
I
When
believe
did,
it.
wait, when did this come out again? 33?
1933. Yeah.
Oh, it would have only been 64 years.
Oh, it's been 84 years. Yeah. I understood that reference. Yeah, I mean, it's short. It's like an hour and 8 minutes. Again, has a lot of like, good sense of humor to it.
I just like to point something out.
Yeah.
Back in this period of film, a long movie was considered, anything beyond 90 minutes was considered long. Like the average movie was like 65 to 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But
I missed that.
I knew you were gonna say something. Now we're in an age where the average runtime is 120 minutes to 150 minutes. So
Yeah, no kidding.
yeah.
Actually, I remember way back in the day when James Roloff was doing his Cinemassacre. The Invisible Man was one of his recommendations, and out of all those ones that he did back then, The Invisible Man was actually the movie that like really caught my attention, and I had to seek it out. And I remember just kind of watching it a lot because it's super short. It's really solid for its time, and I think I just like the tone a lot in it. And Clyde Rains' performance is great, and yeah, it's definitely my favorite out of the Universal monster films.
It's a solid choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My next one. Ooh, okay. Well, we're jumping way ahead, so I don't really have like a favorite movie from the 1940s because I don't know. I think Lyle said this. It's a very depressing time because of like the war going on and all that. Like even the one film that like reflected the times back then, Casablanca, was getting written while the war was happening, and it's about that subject matter.
Yeah,
Now
it's
that's
one of my favorite.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where Here's Looking at You, Kid comes from with
Yeah.
Humphrey Bogart.
Yep, that's right.
That's the one.
Of all the gin joints in all the world, she had to walk into mine.
All the gin joints and all the towns and all this world, she had to walk into
Fall Out Boy
mine.
reference.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Yeah, really good one.
Oh, it's the
A lot
alternate
of
ending.
classic lines.
Did anyone choose Citizen Kane by any chance?
No.
No,
I've
I
actually
didn't want to
only
be
seen it
too
once.
basic.
Can
Yeah.
we just?
It
give
is a
that-
great film.
Can we give that an honorable shout out?
Yeah.
It is.
I've seen it 3
goes
times,
without
and
Maybe it's a tobogganing montage.
So, but we're actually jumping ahead. My last 2 picks are from the 1950s.
Nice.
So one that Evan has seen, and I had to steal it back from him actually, because he chose it momentarily.
Okay, yeah, that's. I technically didn't even realize I was stealing because I didn't see your list.
Yeah, that's okay.
Like before this shows.
Oh, I thought I posted it. Oh, anyways, but
You didn't.
1957's 12 Angry Men. Oh, fucking perfect film. You want to talk about perfect movies, Lyle? There you go. This is fucking perfect.
I agree.
Not guilty. Not guilty.
Jury number 3. How dare you?
Just a great
Yeah.
people study in terms of the
Yeah.
different,
It really
like
is.
the dynamics between the different jurors, and then like you see what starts as like what should be a relatively cut and dry proceeding, like becomes way deeper.
Yeah.
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 It's all because of a devil's advocate who just kind of said, "What if?"
Now,
Well, not just what if he was like, let's just actually sit here and talk about it.
The Marvel stuff from.
Yeah, but no, he persuades everybody over time throughout the runtime, and he actually comes up with pretty strong evidence to support his case.
And what I love about it is that
people.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What I like about it is that every juror kind of has like their own spin on everything. Like some of them are pretty tapped into the case. Some of them are just completely ambivalent. They want to go to a baseball game. Like it's
right.
It's interesting how each one brings a certain thought process to the discussion.
The fact that it's a heat wave and like none of them can think properly like just adds to the tension. And
it's a very tight room.
One of the things, my big takeaway from 12 Angry Men is like the power of the minority in like an argument.
Yeah.
Like the power to like indulge like a contrarian perspective, if you will. Or not, no, contrarian's not the word, because contrarian is just opposite for the sake of opposite. I love it because like it's like the one crucial detail sets off a chain of events that gets them all thinking, and one by one they change their verdict. So
yeah,
it's just yeah, I'd like to go back to what Josh said. It's an excellent tale about the human psyche. So,
well, because it all really. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm going to talk about a movie that was also directed by Sidney Lumet and starring the same actor.
Yeah, Sidney Lumet. This is his first film, and for a first film, this has to be one of the greatest fucking first debuts. Yeah. It's insane. The way the camera moves so fluently, it has like such a great use of like tight close-ups on actors to like really read that subtlety and to make you feel like. And actually, in fact, the last time I watched it, I noticed that the more kind of heated, like the whole argument was getting between a lot of people, is that like the tighter close-ups you get from everybody, and everybody just has their time to shine in it. There's like I always joke and say there's so many moments in the movie where you can just go like ooh, like with the whole crowd, like
press the button like the studio audience with the surprised reaction,
like with the knife.
Or like when jury number 3, I think it's Lee J. Cobbs, he was like, anybody that shouts out, I want to kill somebody really means it. Then later on when Henry Fonda, jury number 8, was like taunting him, being like, you're only here because you're personally biased and all that, and he snaps jury number 3, he's like, I'll kill you. He just goes, you didn't really mean you'd kill me, do you? You're just like, oh! Yeah. Or just that arrogant guy, that really racist guy that's like, oh, that kid who killed his dad. Yeah, jury number 10. He was like, he's a
I love it.
He's an ignorant slob. He don't even speak good English. And then the kind of foreigner guy.
Everybody
jury number 11 is just like, okay, wait, guys, sorry, everyone's talking. I didn't even finish my point. That jury number 11 like undercuts and corrects jury number 10 and just goes like, he doesn't speak good English. I just like, there's like little moments like that I love, like where there's just kind of like ooh.
Wasn't there also a bit like my favorite scene in the movie is when that same guy, juror number, like the prejudice guy, he goes on 10, a tangent.
Yeah.
And everyone just slowly has enough of it, and they all turn their back on him and face the wall. And I think the only one who remains in his seat, I think it's juror 11, the guy with the glasses. Mm-hmm. He's just like, you have made your point. Now sit down and never speak again.
Yeah, this is coming from a guy. It's coming from a guy who's technically like on his side, yet jury number 4 is like more reserved and more like kind of stripped down to the facts.
No. Yeah. I like that.
Which juror is played by the guy who voiced Piglet in Winnie the Pooh?
Number 2.
3, I believe.
No,
Juror 2, yeah.
Number 2 was, yeah. It's funny, when he started talking when I first saw the movie, I'm like, why does his voice sound eerily familiar? Like, I'm like, I know this voice somewhere. And I look it up, yeah, it's Piglet.
I'm sorry. Sorry, you've thrown off the Emperor's Groove.
But see, this character description, it does give me the impression that if Piglet were human, he would kind of resemble Juror 2.
He was also in The Odd Couple too.
Oh,
what's the actor's name? Like I feel like we're
John Fiedler.
John Fiedler, yes.
And I think jury number the guy that grew up in the slums, the one who changed his vote, not
Juror
guilty.
5.
Jury number
Jack
5.
Klugman.
Jack Klugman was the last person to pass away. He lived a long life compared to the other 8.
He was also in The Odd Couple. He was in the TV show.
Oh, was he?
That's an odd couple of pairings.
Wait, you said jury number 5?
Yeah, the long faced guy.
Oh, it's so funny. Jury number 6 is also in my next pick. I forget that actor's name, but
Edward Binns.
yeah.
You nerds are making me look bad because
I'm trying to remember all their names and
I can't remember. Only one, if I recall correctly, only one because they're the anonymity is one of the beauty parts of this movie. Like guys don't know each other. Only one, I think only 2 of them like disclose their names
at the very end. Yeah.
It's so funny you say that, Evan, because one of my short films that I have on the horizon, his name is Davis McCardle, the main character, and that's named after the names that they exchanged at the end of 12 Angry Men.
That's funny. The one actor I know is actually in a ton of things. Juror number 1, Martin Balsam, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
He's in so many movies. He's on the Waterfront. He's in Psycho, and I keep recognizing his face like that guy's from 12 Angry Men.
The OG Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Oh, Lee J. Cobbs, who
he's in
played
that
jury number 3, is also in On the Waterfront as well.
Yeah, he is. He's like the gangbuster guy. Yeah.
Now
That's a good movie. I would give that one a shout out.
I could have been a contender. I could have been a somebody instead of a bum.
This is what I am. Let's face it.
Yeah, you actually stole
no,
you stole it, dude. Yeah, that scene where the camera kind of like tracks out and everybody one by one just dismisses is the greatest shot in the whole movie. It's timeless. It's powerful.
I do notice a few things. Like I noticed the camera shadow whenever the camera kind of leers in. But it's not, I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
it's a really old movie from the 50s. It's not like they had like a viewfinder or anything.
And I remember
It's a tight room.
Joseph Sweeney, who played jury number 9, the old man. He was actually in the play that this was based on, and Henry Fonda, who is also the producer of the film, jury number 8, he saw his performance in that play and said, like, okay, we have to cast him and just reprise the role because he's so good in it. And he's so natural.
That's a great example of like the casting, like stuff that's based on existing things. You want to have that continuity if you're going to do another adaptation of it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Henry Fonda's reaction during the process of the film. He's like, "That's it. I'm never acting and producing in a film at the same time ever again. It's exhausting. I can't do it."
Wow.
But
he
if he had to do
as well.
Yeah, he produced it.
No, he said he couldn't act and produce at the same time. It was too stressful. But hey, if he produces something like this, I mean,
yeah,
good shot. Anyways,
now I'm not that I'm just kind of curious. What kind of Oscar recognition did these films get?
Oh,
like,
good
not
question.
That it matters.
Well,
because
the case
honestly,
of 12
like
Angry Men, it was nominated for 3 Oscars in 58: Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It lost all 3.
what?
To what?
In fact, we can confirm.
Man.
So best.
So it was.
Picture,
So it was like Banshees of Inisherin.
I guess, yeah.
Kind of.
Banshees of Inisherin.
Okay, I have to find like finding a list of these is going to be a little bit more complicated because there's been so many, but it was at least kind of fun watching them.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know it's a great movie. Okay, so there are some movies that I like to watch multiple times, like my favorites that I can watch over and over again. As much as I love 12 Angry Men and it's in my list of top 10 all-time favorite movies, believe it or not, I actually have only seen it 2 or 3 times, and I space like the time between my viewings over years because it's like it's a movie that like I don't want to ever get tired of what I see. I'm sure that if I were to sit down and like microanalyze it, like watch it a couple times, like within the span of a couple weeks, I'd probably like get used to it. But as it stands, like I remember it like so vividly, and I've only seen it 2 or 3 times. It's like those memories are just preserved. Like, I don't need to watch it over and over again, and I kind of don't want to. Maybe I will, like, as I get older, but yeah.
Certain mood for it. And not that it's, like, inaccessible, but it is very, very small.
Yeah.
So
well, case in point, like...
I don't want to watch it all the time, but it is always good every time.
And then
my all-time favorite movie...
Oh, go ahead.
My all-time favorite movie, the summer after I graduated high school, I would watch The Shawshank Redemption like 2 or 3 times a week, and I didn't get tired of it. I just kept wanting to watch more and more of it. But like now, like with Shawshank, I watch it like maybe once or twice a year because like I want like the sacredness to be preserved. I don't want repeat viewings to make it boring, you know. And the same thing goes with 12 Angry Men. Like, there's a part of me that, like, wants to wait a long-ass time before I watch it again.
Yeah, when I watched 12 Angry Men the first time, it was kind of similar to where when I was talking about Jaws, where there's moments in the movie where I actually had to pause and, like, rewind a whole scene just so I can re-experience it, because I just kind of wanted to stay with these characters, per se. Because I wanted to get every single subtlety, every single, like, little nuance, and every single, like, kind of, like, because the expository dialogue is just basically goes into play so many times throughout the film. It's just, like, rich in that. And, yeah, it's a great character performance. It's very themed. It's kind of timeless with its commentary on to not judge someone on, like, just base it on the facts. And what was the line that he said? Like, that, it's hard to keep like personal prejudice out of a case like this, but like
because like poor foreign kid is accused of murdering his father, and the jurors are all white guys, middle-aged white guys.
And it's also and it's neat to kind of visualize the whole case going down. Like you guys probably share it, you know, a different vision in your head, but like I'll close my eyes and just imagine like it all going down, like the old man that hears it from downstairs and the woman across the tracks, you know, like it's witnessing it. And I don't know, it's just it's a very movie that is all dialogue, but like I can just visualize it so well too, you know, so well realized.
So now here's a question for the film buffs. If someone, I'm not saying it should happen, and I hope it doesn't, but if you were to entrust one writer or director to remake this movie, who and why?
It has been remade.
Oh, it has?
There was a 90s one.
Yeah, it was like it was a TV movie. I think Tony Danza.
I think I remember hearing of that.
Tony Danza.
James Gandolfini was in it.
Yeah, James Gandolfini. Okay. Tony Danza was in it. I saw bits and pieces.
Adaptations, actually.
I've seen
I've
seen a lot of adaptations of this, and the acting, even in that one that you just said from the 90s, everything just kind of feels a little too over the top and theatrical.
Perfect. Well, now here's the thing. If they can remake A Star Is Born like 3 times and have the most recent one like be memorized and idolized with like
that's the thing. It's the same thing. It's like some ideas are so evergreen that you can every 3 or 4 decades just do them again, and it's like printing money.
Yeah, like Seven Samurai.
Or
it doesn't always mean that it's the quality is going to retain, but
I remember I was talking to somebody about like like a casting call, like if they would remake 12 Angry Men. I forget who I was talking to, but they chose such a good choice for jury number 3, Bryan Cranston. Like I could picture him just yelling, "You damn kids, you work your life out." I could picture him yelling that.
That would definitely be a good best actor bait right there.
Oh fuck yeah.
Sure.
Which is funny because
the 58 Oscars, it was nominated for Best Motion Picture, Best Director, and at the time what was Best Screenplay based on material from another medium, aka Best Adapted Screenplay. Lost all 3 to The Bridge on the River Kwai.
Ah, that's a great film.
That,
wait,
I just know it as a lyric from We Didn't Start the Fire. It's in one of the
It has such an epic climax in that movie, and that's the one that when George Lucas saw it, it was one of his favorites, and he's like, "Hey, I see him playing my space wizard."
So he too was a fan of an Oscar-bait epic war movie.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be okay if we moved on to
Yeah,
your
yeah.
final pick?
Yeah, the next one is...
Can I just say one last thing very
okay.
quickly?
Yes.
I mean, Lyle kind of shot this idea down, but I want to hear what Josh or Cody think. So, a while ago, I was saying if, like, I don't know how plausible this would be, but if you, like, took the same concept and had, like, and remade it with, like, all women, would it work? Now, it probably wouldn't. The realism would have to be, like, worked differently because, realistically, how many court cases involve a jury of all women? So...
Yeah,
like,
I think realistically today, because that doesn't happen in real life, it has to be... It's all just a mix of everybody.
The lead juror being female and sort of having the
Could be
same effect that juror 3
Yeah.
did, and that being like some gender swapping is always possible.
But then you'd have
I
to
don't think that's possible.
But then you'd have to call it like 12 Angry People, and all the bigots would get mad. No, I absolutely think that could work. But yeah.
Yeah.
Because back in the 50s, it worked for its time because back in the 50s, only men were allowed to be jurors. And today they can be both women and men.
And also
so
the
I
fact
can't really
that
think of any situation.
And also the fact that the law back then was like everyone, it has to be a unanimous vote is like, okay, yeah, this can't fly today.
Yeah.
Well, there are some awards still today that are voted on by like a privately selected jury that the vote has to be unanimous. So
Make the privately selected jury all women. So
yeah.
You never know. But anyways, moving on.
All right.
That's just an idea.
My final pick is, this is in my top 10 favorites. I fucking love this movie. North by Northwest, 1959.
Oh, yes.
Good evening.
Very good.
Excellent
I want to rewatch
choice.
that so bad.
Do you want to hear another
there's
funny
so much
connection?
Hitchcock I do want to watch again sometime.
You know what's hilarious? When I talked about The Brave Little Toaster, there is a reference to that movie, and it's actually quite witty. It says the radio is like tuning in, is like trying to figure out where to tell his friends to which direction to travel in, and when he figures out a direction, he says, "North by Northwest. Watch out for low-flying aircraft."
Basically, Cary Grant plays this guy named Roger Thornhill. He's like an advertisement executive. And, okay, for me to really break down the plot, it would just fry all your brains. But basically, in a nutshell, he's being mistaken. It's a whole wrong place, wrong time, mistaken identity, and he's just, like, trekking across the country. He's getting chased by the government agents who thinks he's, like, the real bad guy. But the real bad guy is after him as well because they think that he's a government agent. It's just a very complicated situation he gets himself into, and what I love about this film is that, like...
This is what a cornfield looks like, honey!
Oh my god. yeah, you got the infamous crop duster scene, that's awesome. But that's the thing that I love about this film is that, like, the scale of it is incredible. It's, like, probably the first proper, like, action thriller ever brought to cinema. And...
I would say so.
And I always say like a hot take that no one else has said before, but like I believe that if it wasn't for North by Northwest, about a couple years after that, the producers of the James Bond series would not have the confidence to believe that if the Ian Fleming books can be properly adapted to film, because that I get such like
the
precursor.
Very first few James Bond films all have that element.
Yep. Yeah, like that suave that he kind of brings to the character, because like Roger Thornhill is a bit of a smartass at the same time throughout this whole thing. Like he's not, even though he's in peril, he's also like very like reserved and mannered, and he also have Eva Green in it, almost giving like another kind of like, you know, womanizing kind of performance
Eva
as
Marie
well.
Saint.
Oh, what did I say?
You said Eva Green. Eva Green was
Casino Royale.
You said
Sorry.
Eva Green.
I know, yeah.
Eva Green was not.
Not even born
yet.
yet.
Was not acting back.
But I agree. It's got that early sort of. It's got that early Sean Connery persona. Is personage a word? Cary Grant has a lot of the same mannerisms as as like early Bond. So it would be interesting to see the alternate universe where Cary Grant was a Bond for a few films.
Right. Yeah, no, I think also like Hitchcock, what he does really nicely is that like even though he's like been, you know, he's obviously like the master at thrillers, like he's one of the all-time greats. But what I like what some of his movies do is that he actually like kind of like does sub genres of thrillers. Like Rear Window kind of feels like a point of view thriller, and Psycho's kind of more like straight up horror, and like Vertigo is a very like kind of psychological thriller, and like I think that this one is like a really like, you know, like like really prime definition of like an action thriller, North by Northwest. And there's even like so many like parts in the movie where apparently like they shot literally like guerrilla style, like that scene where he goes to the U.S. embassy, like just the exterior of him getting out of the cab and walking towards the building, like they just had to quickly shoot that because they got rejected trying to film there. Like he goes out of his way.
Yeah, it's the U.S.
That's
embassy.
that's so punk rock.
I mentioned being a gentleman. All right, now let's move on. We don't have a permit. Quickly, run away. That's my Hitchcock impression.
You know, that is surprising. A lot of like the really beloved Hitchcock films were actually towards like the tail end of his directing career.
Yeah, his earlier stuff is a
that.
bit rough. That's the thing. I mean, I yet to have seen like a couple other ones because I've seen about a dozen of Hitchcock films. I found that he just got a little bit more sophisticated as years went on. Like Strangers on a Train is a great one. Rebecca is a great one. There's also another one. I'm forgetting the name, but there's a few more that I guess like I see.
39 Steps.
I think I saw that.
I want to see 39 Steps.
Yeah, I think I saw 39 Steps. I can't
Have
remember.
you seen Rope?
I have seen Rope. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, it was kind of gimmicky,
It's a good one.
but it's not bad.
Oh, totally, but it's still.
Yeah.
For an experiment, it worked pretty well.
I'm kind of going to have a hot take here. I would love to see the original Mr. and Mrs. Smith just so I can understand where all the hype was for the remake.
Oh,
With
that's
Ra-
right. He
Ramsey,
did do the
yeah.
original. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
because like if you think about it, that
Oh, he
premise
did?
worked
Yeah.
then.
Wow.
It was just like they updated it to be instead of like they're both secret agents instead of whatever the twist was here.
Wait, Evan, you haven't seen this yet, have you?
Those are some really great choices.
Yeah.
Evan, have you seen this yet?
No,
Sorry.
I haven't, and no, I have not seen North by Northwest.
Oh,
I know of it
Sure.
though. Don't
please.
I haven't. I've
you gotta
only
watch
seen
that.
like I think. Dare I say it? I actually think Psycho may be the only Hitchcock film that I've seen. It's
right.
That's that I can remember. It's possible that I've seen something else. Actually, no. I studied. I think we all went. No, with the exception of Josh, we went to the same film school. In audio class, did you guys do that assignment with that scene from The Birds?
Yes.
Where like, yeah.
Where she's out on the water and she's watching. Yeah.
I went to a
Yeah.
different school, the School of Life.
I totally forgot about the
Yeah.
birds, and that's one that like my mom back then built it up being like the scariest movie ever made because she has a fear of birds. So I went into it thinking, "Oh, is this going to be scary?" And I thought it was the funniest comedy I've ever seen in my life. Like this is like so cheap and
Wait.
Well, coming up, Josh
So
will tell us
so
those
now I
thoughts
have to
about
ask. So Cody, now I have to ask: is your mom scared of Birdemic?
she's more horrified by the filmmaking. that's the
She
terrifying
just has
thing.
to stay out of the grocery store parking lots in the spring and summer. It's real life Birdemic.
Yeah.
All right,
Shock and terror. It's in the title. Shock and
I have
terror.
one last Hitchcock-related question.
Yeah.
Cody,
Yeah.
have you seen either of his The Man Who Knew Too Much? Because there's the 34 one, but then there's a 56 one that is an entirely different genre but uses the same title and a different premise.
It's like I have to kind of go to my letterbox to refresh my memory. Let me see.
Sponsored.
Sponsored. Okay, yes, I have seen The Man Who Knew Too Much. No, I haven't seen that one yet. I just recently watched
Okay.
The Lady Vanishes, and that's another example where it's like early, like
an
hasn't
invisible
quite.
man and a lady vanishes.
What about the children? Won't someone think of the children?
And that's how Sue Storm was born. Wait a minute.
All right,
Ew.
that's all my picks for the night.
That was great.
Okay.
Very good. Very good.
So-
Evan, you're next.
Okay, I'm next. So, First movie I want to talk about is actually on the note of 12 Angry Men. So it wasn't. So in 1964, Henry Fonda and Sidney Lumet come they collaborated again, and this time for a thriller about nuclear war. And the biggest movie about nuclear war that came out in 1964 was Stanley Kubrick's Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Did I almost call it Doctor Strangelove?
Just
Doctor Strange.
insert the green screen of writing the bomb all the way down.
Get off the nuclear warhead now.
Gentlemen, we can't fight in here. This is a war room.
Oh, that's a classic line.
No nukes! No nukes! No nukes!
Well, if I were talking about classic cinema, and yet Evan references a Michael Bay film.
Yeah.
That's the joke.
That's Evan. It's okay. But you picked a different one. You picked a different movie.
Yeah. So, Failsafe. Basically, Failsafe is a movie about. It was unfortunately, it was overshadowed by Doctor Strangelove. But the premise is this isn't a comedy. It's a thriller. So
I thought it was a backup pick.
The premise is a little. The premise is a bit. Well, it's not simple. Basically, in the it's the Cold War in the 1960s. The Russians and the U.S. are at each other's throats as per usual, and one day, a squadron of American bombers receives a coded message that they believe is from Washington. It's given them instructions to fly to Moscow and drop a nuclear warhead on it, effectively starting World War III and ending humanity.
Oh, jeez.
But here's the thing. That signal got sent to those bombers by an automated computer by mistake. So once the powers that be figure out what the hell has happened, they are desperately trying to recall the Americans are desperately trying to recall their bomber squadrons, but to no avail. Eventually, news works its way up to the President of the United States himself, played by Henry Fonda. And the rest of the movie is intercut between Henry Fonda on the phone with the chairman of the Soviet Union, basically trying to explain to him, yeah, we made a mistake, and bombers of ours are on their way to Moscow to nuke you, and you guys have to stop them, and we're going to try and stop them for you, but just so you know, we messed up, and you're coming. But the real kick of it is, the reason why the Americans can't get a hold of their bomber squadrons is because the Russians were jamming American signals. So it's kind of like a giant clusterfuck of air. The horrific compromise of this movie is, will the Americans be able to stop their rogue bombers before they start World War III? Or, failing that, how do they compromise? And what happens from there on out? And it's a movie that I kind of want to sell you guys on that, but
Walter Matthau's in it. That's pretty good. That's awesome.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, and Dom DeLuise.
Don DeLuise and Sorrel Bach, I think that's his name.
Sorrel.
That's Boss Hogg from the original Dukes of Hazzard.
Wow, that's all these generally comedic actors being in such a very depressing and serious film.
Right.
Hey,
which
by the way,
that's the flip side of the Doctor Strangelove thing.
Hey.
You know, both films are warning about the dangers of nuclear warfare.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's interesting that you point out that that there's a bunch of comedy actors in Failsafe, but I would like to stress that I'm going to quote another contemporary filmmaker who's not Michael Bay. Thank you very much. Vince Gilligan. Vince Gilligan, creator of Breaking Bad, is on record saying, so he casts a bunch of comedians. Bryan Cranston's claim to fame was Malcolm in the Middle, and Vince Gilligan's logic is, if you could do comedy, you can definitely be in a drama, like, and you can be just as good at it. And case in point, now Bryan Cranston is more known for Breaking Bad than he is for Malcolm in the Middle. So, but back to Failsafe, yeah, it's a nail biter. And given the plot I described, do you think that there would be like a Top Gun thing, a Top Gun style movie where you show footage of bombers? No, like all the footage you see of these bombers is all stock footage. But when my dad pitched the plot of this movie to me when I was like 13, 14 years old, I was envisioning like an action movie. It's not an action movie at all. Like, despite the fact that it has like warplanes in it and nuclear weapons, like you actually don't see it. It's all implied in dialogue, which makes it even more chilling. So definitely watch it and be prepared for a nail biter.
Yeah, I've never heard of this actually. I'd like to check this out actually.
Well, I'm glad I was able to recommend it to you.
Half of the
but,
title is true.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the next movie I wanted to talk about now, something just occurred to me. I picked a movie that. So the cutoff year for the Golden Age is 1969.
69, yep.
Damn it. Okay, then I know exactly what else I'm going to pick. It turns out... So, initially I was a little hesitant to do this episode because it's like... I don't feel very cultured. Like, I don't consider myself that familiar with the Golden Age. And then I'm just scrolling through, like, my letterbox of, like, stuff I've seen. I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I've seen tons of stuff we could talk about. Case in point, I'm going to go... So, I'm going to... With my list, I'm going to go further back in time. So, we just talked about a movie from 1964. I'm going to go back to 1960... We're going to go back to 1951. Case in point, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Ooh.
Just like with 12... No, here's the thing. Remember how I was talking about how I've only seen 12 Angry Men 2 or 3 times? I have seen The Day the Earth Stood Still once, and I remember it like almost to the letter. Like, the plot is... And it's kind of another simple plot. So, a UFO lands in Washington, D.C., and it's the 1950s. It's first contact with alien life, but nothing comes out of this UFO. It just kind of stays. It kind of parks its ass. It lands in the middle of Washington, and no one comes in or out until like one being emerges, or two beings, realistically. Two beings emerge. One has the ability to blend in with humanity. The other one is basically a robot. So Klaatu is the ambassador and Gort is the destroyer. And so what do we mean by that? Okay, so basically Klaatu blends himself in, disguises himself as a human, shapeshifts, almost so seemingly that and he befriends a little boy, and my favorite line, when as Klaatu gets to know the little boy has no clue he's alien. The little boy, when he's like, they're making small talk, the little boy goes, "I like you, sir. You're a real screwball." And like, like they're bonding. And the whole idea is like, we don't know why these aliens are here or what they want until the very end of the movie. And it's one of those movies where like, have all of you seen this movie?
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
I actually...
Josh,
I actually just recently watched this past Halloween. For the first time.
That's very cool. Yeah, no, it's a decent Halloween movie. Yeah, so I like it because like it basically this alien race is here to evaluate humanity for what reason? The last scene of the movie explains why the aliens are here, and it's another poignant message about humanity's place in the universe. Now, it's about humanity's place in the universe circa 1951. At that point in history, we were on the cusp of developing rocket technology. We hadn't left the atmosphere yet. That wouldn't happen until 57 when Sputnik went up. But our technology was getting close to take humanity into space. These aliens knew that, so they were here to evaluate us. It's like, okay, so humanity, once you get into space, what are you going to be, a friend to the Galactic Order, or are you going to be a foe to the Galactic Order? So, but what was really disturbing was the aliens had just learned that we have nuclear weapons. So that's their main concern. It's like, okay, so these primitive beings on this gorgeous planet have weapons, and they just spent 6 years murdering each other in the deadliest war in the history of the planet. So what kind of a race is humanity? And that's why I love the title, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Like, it really will have you standing still to question your place in the universe.
And I think
do not get me started. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I was about to say, yes, I have seen the bullshit Keanu Reeves remake they made in 2008. Don't get me started.
Oh, I forgot about that. I didn't see that.
Okay, that movie had a great cast, but it was horribly acted, and the premise was kind of interesting. Like, it's an updated version of the premise from 1951, but in 2008, like, the why the remake doesn't work is because I love Keanu Reeves, and I feel bad for saying this, but
hey, John,
when Keanu Reeves
coming out soon, it's okay.
It's out today as of this. It's out now as of this recording. So.
No.
And by the time this episode airs, it's probably going to have cleaned house with the
I've heard it's the best one.
Now we really
or since the first. Really best one or the best one since the first.
Rest in peace, Lance.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, rest in peace, Lance.
Absolutely.
Now, so the problem with the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still is that I don't buy that Keanu Reeves is not an alien. He acts like an alien. The whole Klaatu in the remake acts like an alien.
Like 3 times, well, 4 now, but 3.
I know, but still, like the genius of Day of the Earth, the first movie, was that the aliens blend in with humanity so seamlessly that we're not even supposed to know they're there. So that to me is so. Like I said, there's not much more I can say. The original Day of the Earth is still a great movie.
Well, I actually would recommend to you, Evan. You've seen. I don't know if have you seen the original the War of the Worlds?
Okay. Are we talking about the original? I've heard War of the Worlds was started off as a recording.
Not the recording. The 19.
It was a book.
Yeah, the H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells. It was a book. Then it was a radio broadcast, and I have seen the Spielberg version, and I've listened to part of the original broadcast. Just for the record.
Okay, so you haven't seen the original. Okay.
No, I have not seen the original War of the Worlds.
Well, I do recommend that one, and I do recommend Forbidden Planet.
Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, because these are like, okay. I mean, if you do like kind of like these 1950s kind of sci-fi movies, they were kind of like a reflection of the times, because like that was the Cold War. That was like a lot of like, you know, people having a lot of this government paranoia, like what's happening behind the scenes. They're building these
Scare, McCarthyism as a whole, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very thought-provoking film for its time. I mean, I'm kind of used to the atomic age, and a lot of it's just like a monster shows up in the last 10 minutes.
Well, like science fiction as a whole in that time, too, because it does sort of parallel real-world things in a lot of ways.
On the contrary, like I like how they don't show what Gort is capable of until the end, or close to the end. Like, they show that Gort can vaporize a tank with just one laser blast.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so, and then the final movie, so, we're going back to the 30s, and this is a surprise pick. This movie turns 90 years old this year, and I literally just watched it a few hours ago, right before recording, so it's completely fresh. I've never seen this movie until today. It's a story of suspense, it's a story of mystery, and it pushed the boundaries of filmmaking beyond like what audiences were used to back in 1933.
Very intrigued. What is it?
Case in point. What's the eighth wonder of the world?
Oh, Around the World in 80 Days? What?
No,
A delicious
no,
bowl of duck soup.
no.
Oh, King Kong.
Donkey
King
Kong is
Kong.
here.
Oh,
The
okay.
original.
No,
The original
Donkey
King
Kong.
Kong.
Oh
I
my
thought it was gonna
god.
be the
Donkey-
Gold Diggers of 1930.
All right, let's
I was tempted to.
let's
pick
get the
this one.
King Homer references out of the way. Let's take turns.
Let's get the legendary
Well,
Film Universe references out of the way.
But I've seen a lot of movies. I think women and semen don't mix. We all know what you think, Smithers.
Let's go to Candy Apple Island. What do they have there? Apes, but they're not so big.
Apes. Well, not so big. So,
Oh, good pick.
So according to
Good pick.
Okay, so apparently it's not called Ape Island, it's called Skull Island, and like what I love about King Kong is that you actually don't really I know what they're going after, but the suspense, how they build up to the island and Kong's first appearance is done very well.
Mm-hmm.
And the scene where he like fights the dinosaurs. By the way, because like I was a bit of a dino nut when I was a kid, I was like seeing an apatosaurus swallow a human. That wouldn't happen. They're vegetarians. And then seeing
Hey, any
Kong
port in a
clobber. Yeah. Seeing Kong clobber a T-Rex, that's some good stuff. And, of course, there's the final scene.
A giant ape and a giant lizard.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get to that one. Toho, I think, was taking notes back then, so, yeah. But anyways, yeah, what I love about this movie is just the suspense and the build-up. Like, it's very, very well done in terms of how it establishes its world and the mystery, and like once you actually see the beast, like Kong was a spectacle to behold. Like you got last episode, what was it, or some time ago, we were all at an Oscar party recently, and we were talking about the wonders of stop motion and how like it was the Oscar for Best Animated Feature went to a stop-motion film for the first time since Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, I'm going to see that
Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, yeah. And, like, Kong is achieved with stop-motion animatronics by Ray Harryhausen.
Oh, Harryhausen's one of the goats.
He's like
Brian.
Hell yeah.
He's Ray Harryhausen and Wilson Bryan, like they are the granddaddies of movie monsters.
So they're sort of like, if you guys know of like The Evil Dead or like any of the practical effects of horror movies, like Tom Savini or Baker, someone named with the last name of Rick Baker.
Rick Baker.
Yeah, Tom Savini and Rick Baker. Those are kind of like the mid-late 20th century ones. Harryhausen and his partner, they're like the big two for that period.
Yes. Now, I'm very aware that this movie did get remade. Well, so it's been remade technically 3 times. Like in North America in the 70s, it got remade, and then they made a sequel to that remake called King Kong Lives later on, and then Peter Jackson did remake it in 2005, and apparently it's done. I've heard mixed things. I've heard people say it's amazing, and I've heard people say it's garbage. But
I don't like
I'm kind of in the middle. I can understand I share the positives and the negatives with Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Oh yeah. So
it was really well received at the time. It's not aged terribly in the almost 20 years since, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't aged at all.
I just heard that Jack Black was completely. I've heard that Jack Black was completely miscast. Lyle, you're talking
he was also
about the guy,
Holiday, right? So people make mistakes.
Oh right, yeah, fair enough. Lyle, you're talking. You want to complain that it's too long? You're talking about the guy who made Lord of the Rings. Like,
well, at least that time was used wisely. I mean, for Christ's sakes, I don't need to be on the boat for over 40 minutes.
Well, which is funny because. In the relevance of the runtime, because this movie remember how I was talking about runtimes? This movie is about this movie is about I think just over
100
I think
minutes,
it's
but with the overture, 104. So it's definitely
so
under
it's
2
it's a
hours.
hundred it's a hundred it's a hundred it's 100 minutes long. So it's an hour 45. Back in 1933, that would have been considered a long movie. So,
There's also some commentary.
I think the runtime was.
There's also some commentary that's kind of like people have discovered years later upon reevaluating King Kong, which is it's kind of an interesting theory, but like they talked about how it's like there's a theme of like it's racism is the theme behind King Kong.
Right, yeah.
And I can see it.
Because,
That's possible. I can see
like,
it. Also the
white...
whole colonialism thing, or in the sense of like
Yeah.
taking a creature from their homeland and bringing them to the big city and just culture shock. There's a lot of stuff you could dig under the surface and find.
Mm-hmm.
Exploitation.
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. The scene where he's chained up in the theater, like with the stop motion stuff, he breaks the chains and then, rampages through New York City.
Yeah. Oh, and I love the last line of the movie. Like, really speaks to me. It's like, we got him by the airplanes. The airplanes didn't kill him. Beauty killed the beast. And then the movie just ends on a really kind of ominous note. Yeah. Sorry for all two of you who hadn't seen it. I just gave away the movie, but it's I hadn't seen it until today.
An undertone, if you think, like, between, I don't know if they ever touch on this in the sequels, but is it implied that Anne seems to reciprocate any of King Kong's feelings? Because she seems to sympathize with his plight towards the end.
Going back to King Homer, like, it is definitely implied that there is like a romance, like there is an implied connection.
There you have it, King Kong ahead of its time.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Cool.
Oh, Marge, I can't find your father. Oh, Homer. Do.
I remember, like, with everyone loves the original, but I remember, like, when Skull Island and now Godzilla vs. Kong came out, they seemed like fairly much more faithful sort of reboots of the IP.
Okay. Now, here's the issue I have with Kong. And Toho was the first to jump on Kong versus Godzilla.
Basically, because RKO licensed King Kong to Toho, and there were 2 King Kong films, King Kong vs. Godzilla, which is also the 3rd film in the Godzilla series, and King Kong Escapes, that were directed by the late great Ishiro Honda.
Now, what I'd like to know is, so what never made sense to me is Godzilla is like the size of a skyscraper, and King Kong is not that big in comparison. But in the new movie, they make Kong out to be like something that could rival Godzilla, like in terms of size. I think maybe just in
presence and stature, in the sense that, like, in a lot of ways, some of the deeper things we talked about Kong representing in terms of American cinema, Godzilla was like that for Japanese cinema, but on a much deeper level, because if you understand the cultural stuff around when it was created and even like going forward,
sure.
Like, I think a lot of Godzilla's stuff has aged pretty well, except for Godzilla versus Hedorah. No, the one, Lyle, you talked about the one with the sludge monster. That one.
Yeah, no, I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually, for the record,
that is Hedorah. Yes, that one's. It was a thing.
Lyle in our first
Son of Godzilla.
Which is funny because they rushed out the Son of Kong right after this one.
Yeah. They did.
You're right, yeah.
Not great.
And they also, so I have seen, shortly after Lyle and I became roommates, he owned a copy of the original Godzilla. I have watched it, and it's also a well done movie. It almost became one I talked about tonight, but it's like, nah. I had
debated that as well, but I figure if you guys had talked about a film in a different episode prior, I feel like it's had its time. It's been done.
No, but what I want to keep King Kong a surprise is because it's been sitting. The original film has been sitting on my shelf for God knows how long, and I'm like, well, if we're gonna talk about it, I may as well watch it for the first time ever and have it be fresh. Yeah, like. For me, the suspense and payoff, it's one of the most masterful examples of setup and payoff I've ever seen on screen. So Very well done.
Nice.
And those are my movies.
I think it was my favorite film in film school, actually.
Oh,
Before
yeah?
I started expanding my palette. Yeah, I thought it was epic.
It is epic.
Who's that? Oh, Josh is up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm next. I'm gonna sort of do what Cody did and just rattle off a few quick names. It seemed interesting to me, and maybe I will check them out afterwards. So first one is the 41 version of the Maltese Falcon.
Oh yes, the first
Humphrey Bogart movie that's not Casablanca.
The first MacGuffin ever brought to film.
Very true.
True.
I think it's an interesting film noir that I would definitely want to check out, and especially since it's got some of those the same way you said that Cary Grant would have made a good James Bond. I feel like Humphrey Bogart was the American equivalent. He was dashing. Yeah. He had his very debonair moments, but he had his very badass moments where he just
I agree.
Whatever room he was in, he owned that room. So I'm gonna check that out. One I actually almost considered picking tonight, All About Eve.
Yep, that's a good
really
one.
Nice one.
I haven't seen it.
It's a very well written movie.
Definitely got some interesting sort of meta commentary on the idea of fandom and sort of fandom, personal life and private life sort of getting really entangled, and I just really love Bette Davis's performance in this one. This one's more of a personal pick because it reminds me of my dad, The Alamo, because it's a great John Wayne film, and it's another epic war movie of sorts, but I believe he has a DVD of this at home, so when I think of The Alamo and John Wayne in particular, I sort of reminded, I think he's one of my dad's favorite actors, and it reminds me of seeing him watching some of his films on TC, Turner Classic Movies or AMC or Silver Screen Classics, one of those channels that shows old movies really frequently.
I haven't seen The Alamo, actually.
I think you might like it. I mean, I don't know a lot of John Wayne films per se, but this one was it sort of stuck out as something that I just watched. Personal connection with.
I literally just watched Stagecoach for the first time, and
that's also a good John Wayne film as well, for the western part.
I recently watched Rio Bravo.
Oh, I want to watch that. Yes, I want to watch it. That's Howard Hawks, right?
One that's not so. Howard Hawks. One that's not so fun is The Searchers.
It's pretty good. I like The Searchers.
Oh no, it's really good. I'm just saying it's not fun.
It's depressing.
It's not fun because of
it's
depressing. That's what I mean to say.
Yeah.
It's not fun like Real
Lastly
Bravo.
Was Dr. Strangelove, just because the flip side, making fun, not war.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
To get into my picks proper, I'm going with probably one of. I mean, it's a pretty basic pick for early comedy legends, but probably everybody's favorite Charlie Chaplin film, Modern Times.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
And this was back when it was mostly still a silent film, because there's only a little bit of talking in it, but just the character, Chaplin's character of the tramp he goes through a lot, but he's also very relatable just because he is portrayed as the everyman, and the chemistry that he has with Ellen, you can see they're both from the same area in that they both have had a lot of rough times the last bit, but just hopefully they'll get through whatever they were going through together. The ending does remind me a little bit of, I feel like The Graduate took a bit of influence from Modern Times, that the ending is just sort of they're just going somewhere, they have no idea where, but I guess they'll have to figure it out, just like the end when they're on the bus.
Yep.
And
I can't watch this movie without thinking about Joker, though. The leitmotif theme, da 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 da.
Well, there is a lot of physical comedy, but I don't think there's dancing on the stairs.
But Joker actually shows a clip in Modern Times when he's skating at the department store.
I did not intend for that to be that's a coincidence.
Now,
yeah.
Oh man,
it's referenced many times in Joker.
Man, how did I forget to talk about The Graduate? Okay, there are The Graduate gets an honorable mention from me. It's such a clever, poignant film.
Oh, I love that movie.
But you know what? The Graduate, at its core, The Graduate is a miserable, miserable story. Watch it again. It's miserable as hell.
Which is also interesting because
there's a charm to it.
With Modern Times, there's actually a lot more deeper commentary on what America was going through during the Great Depression, and just because America became more industrialized around that time, it wasn't really for the better.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of That's what's fascinating. It's like you think, Charlie Chaplin for a lot of his life was known as the comedy guy, but like, his films did still pack a lot of punch, and I definitely want to check out some of his other works because I
I
think
re-
this is probably the only one
I
I know off the
recommend
top of my head.
I recommend City Lights and The Gold Rush.
Oh yeah,
All
the Gold Rush I think I know by name.
and also The Great Dictator. I would say save the Great Dictator for last if you
Oh
ever
yeah,
want to
The
watch
Great
all of his
Dictator
work.
definitely sounds like it came out in the time it came out in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mind the kid,
his
too.
speech. His speech at the end.
Oh, the speech is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Kid and the Circus are pretty solid, and I think that's actually it that I've seen by him. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, he's a great performer. It's yeah. I think him and
The assembly line scene.
yes, that's classic.
Oh my god, the set designs that's perfect.
Is this the one that has the two little shoes and he's kind of like playing around
Oh, that's
with them?
the potatoes. That's the Gold Rush.
I see. I get these kind of mixed up a bit because he has like little vignettes,
Sir,
little
I
bits.
represent the estate of Charles Chaplin. I have a court order demanding an immediate halt to this unauthorized imitation. Boys?
Yeah, two little potatoes he's playing.
Right.
Yeah. The gear sequence is really
Oh,
well done,
jeez.
too, where he gets like pulled through the
It's
mechanism.
like stressful.
Like
I don't know how they did that.
That is cartoon slapstick brought to life. Right
Hell yeah.
there.
Truly.
I think
Now,
some
my
of these
next
might
pick-
be on YouTube. Probably. There's a lot of
I'm
old
hoping
Golden
some of
Age
them are,
movies
just
on
'cause
YouTube.
Especially the further back you go, streaming services haven't figured this out yet. You can have stuff from before the World of Color
Right.
service.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
I preach.
Now,
Hopefully that changes in the next
have you-
10 years.
how do you guys feel about black and white films being colorized? Because the tech does exist.
It depends. Sometimes,
Yeah.
like when it's
Get outta here,
sanctioned,
Ted Turner.
it
Oh,
adds
God.
detail. Like it recontextualizes things, but also it's almost like a Mandela effect type thing. Like it makes you imagine details that you swore were there, but they actually were never there to begin with.
Can I ask you all a question?
Yeah, sure.
As a kid, did you all believe that back then the world was black and white because of film?
No.
No,
Oh,
but like
I
there's
did.
always that.
Yes. Yeah. No. I know what you're saying. Yes. Yes.
Watch The Wizard of
I
Oz. I'm
did.
like, wait, why is everything back then all like sepia tone or like black and white? I thought that was
Because that was the medium at the time.
no, but I thought the world was like that, like everything.
I know what he's saying, and I did too for a time. Yeah.
Like if I open my eyes right now, everything is in black and white.
But when you dream in color.
Yeah.
Right.
So my next pick, it was actually sort of a thought because I realized, after seeing Hellzapoppin', I've kind of been wanting to get into like more meta comedy stuff and just like, I like things where they point out the absurdity of it all. And so what
Yeah.
better example than one of the best screwball comedies of all time, His Girl Friday.
I have
Now-
yet to see
I
this one.
literally
stars Cary
just watched this or finished it today. I think that's so funny.
Wow.
It's got a lot of fourth wall breaking gags, but it's got a bit of depth to it where there's an editor that's about to lose his ace reporter and his ex-wife all at the same time, and shenanigans ensue, and it's a wild ride.
It's another Howard
Right,
Hawks
yeah.
film, Lyle.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's pretty I was very surprised on how fast the pacing was in the dialogue. It's. I mean, I was almost like
Hawks
confused, but
literally
I'm like,
went out to break
in
the
a good
record.
way?
Like, this guy had a purpose.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's amazing. Wow. You know what I realized? Howard Hawks is like one of those speedrunners on Twitch. He's literally trying to go for an 80% speed run on the dialogue.
it's insane. I can see why
Well, that's
Tarantino
the thing,
loves
though.
this
I
guy.
like films that that take the audience seriously. It's like we're making sure that we're cramming in as much as we can because we trust you're going to follow it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I personally really enjoyed this, and it's so funny, like all the little threads between this person was in this, and then we end up each of us end up picking like two of the same thing that had like a similar person in it.
Like
so
Cary Grant, yeah.
quite enjoyed that one. And then, my final one was already elaborated on earlier, but I figure, it's spring, the geese and seagulls are coming back. So why don't we talk
Yeah.
about the birds? again.
Oh, someone brought
Bring us
that up.
Right back, yeah.
So
And I feel bad. I kind of chirped
essentially,
it.
it's what
No
would
pun
happen
intended.
if birds were feral.
Jerked.
Nice.
That's a good one.
It's Hitchcock, but at the same time, it's got its own sort of level of horror. It's not the surreal. It's not as intense as like
It's
say,
a B
Psycho
movie.
or Vertigo or Rerun. It is a B movie. It has that
Done
degree of
very,
schlock.
very
I
well.
can acknowledge that it can seem corny over time, but just like if you have any sort of like phobia or intense dislike of birds, especially like ducks, swans, geese, seagulls, any of those, like the premise of this would just be terrifying because like they are just swarming everything, and it's just that looming tension, especially when like you actually start to see like everything spread, and it's just like it gets intense, and even at the end when everything comes to a head, just like it's the same uncertainty, believe it or not, in modern times. You have no idea where the characters are going, and the fact all the birds are still watching them as they're very slowly getting away, but like you have no idea if they'll ever make it to their destination, but just like, and the implication that it's not just happening in this part of California, who knows where else in America this could be happening, but just
Yeah.
it's
And
one of my favorites just for that sort of like
there was a
darkness alone.
So now, I've just got to give two shout outs. Like in pop culture, there was a cinematic genius who in the year 2000 made in the year 2010, sorry, he made the bold and daring effort to try and remake this movie about a scene where a virus just infects birds, and then they start like slaughtering people. I believe like this cinematic genius who can't speak English very well, but like he has script writing just down with science, and he knows how to direct these actors, and it totally does not look like his film is shot on a camcorder. But yeah, I think it's the keywords to describe this amazing remake are shock and terror.
There's a third one now, right?
I can't wait to watch it.
There's a third Birdemic?
Well, that makes it a D movie.
No, you
E
do
movie.
not feel excited. It's actually worse than the first one.
Before that, did you know that Earworks was actually nominated for an Oscar for Best Special Effects for his work on the birds? This is the same animator that did a lot of the early Mickey Mouse cartoons.
Oh, cool.
Unfortunately, it lost to the only other nominee, which was Emil Cosa Jr. for Cleopatra.
I'm kind of in the same boat as Cody in that it's kind of hard to take this movie seriously sometimes. But there are a couple things that get under my skin, especially the telephone booth scene.
Any enclosed space with things like further boxing you in, that just really gets to me personally.
It's a shame what happened to Tippi Hedren, though. She really got a lot of abuse for this film.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Shelley Duvall situation.
Oh,
I think with the level of classiness that this film has is just it's not needed. It kind of needs to be purposely more schlock. Like, albeit if say somebody like Ed Wood decided to make The Birds, it would be crap, but it would also match the kind of like schlocky B movie-ist that was because this came out at a time, The Birds, in like the 1960s. Like I think like times kind of changed from the 50s, and like this wasn't around when like The Creature from the Black Lagoons and stuff like that was out, where it's just there's like this level of camp to it that was really like rich and appreciated a lot in the 50s. And with the Birds, it's interesting to see like that level of class to it.
But at the same time, we did talk earlier about like later Hitchcock films became more and more not serious, not serious, but like I forgot the wording for
like
it.
Sophisticated.
Yeah, there was a lot more sophistication going on, but like it became kind of clear maybe it was more a case of detachment and ego, because now like again it's a case of seeing how the sausage is made and understanding like there was probably a lot of that disconnect there. It still kind of blows my mind they even tried to make a sequel to this like 30 years later with Land's End.
Yeah.
Did they?
Yes.
What?
94.
How am I not aware of this? What
it's a
the hell?
made-for-TV movie, so you're not missing much. But
that explains a lot.
I think more the legacy for The Birds is like it's surprisingly. I mean, this might be a hot take. It's a surprisingly accessible Hitchcock film on the same level as Psycho, in that there's a good chance people have heard of it, even not by name, but just by the premise. And yes, the Asylum did basically take the schlockiness of this movie and ramp it up to ridiculous degrees with Birdemic, which is now in its third entry. But I think in a way that's an interesting way to make this premise accessible to the next generation, especially in the YouTube generation. It's not, if it's not something that's supposed to be taken seriously, why not just go all out and just make it as so bad it's good as possible?
Yeah, like Sharknado.
One of the two directors of the sequel, he went under the pseudonym Alan Smithy. I don't even need to look no further. Okay, never mind.
That's all
That's all I got. That's all. That's it. That's it. All right, I can move on.
I still get a little apprehensive though every time I see geese and a flying V above me. Like, I don't know whether they're going to practice any dive bombing.
Oh Jesus!
Oh, like a Blitzkrieg type of thing.
Get the clothes hangers out.
Maybe it's the wrong type of birds.
Now,
or like when they're walking on the pavement,
movie.
Because if you get too close to geese, they get protective.
Yeah. Especially in nesting season. Especially in nesting season. Yeah. You been chased by a goose, Lyle?
Yeah, I was biking near one and it just started. I was scared.
You got too close to her nest. Yeah.
I don't know. I was just on the sidewalk.
That's how it always starts. Yeah.
In a weird way. Speaking of the schlockiness, you could say the birds and Maximum Overdrive tread similar paths.
Huh.
In a way,
they're not alien birds.
No, in the sense of like some supernatural thing causes a certain thing to go rogue. Whether it's some EMP that causes all electrical appliances and trucks to go crazy, or birds
have
just
a
suddenly
life of their own.
Yeah, like there's a supernatural element to it, but it also the schlockiness also inspired a pretty funny Arthur episode called The Squirrels.
What?
Squirrels.
Basically, the gist is they watch some movie about squirrels. Basically, it's the same thing as the birds, but with squirrels, and then they all get nightmares about it.
Okay.
I'm surprised we didn't talk about that last year.
And now back to.
Somebody better check on him.
Have we ticked all the boxes for this So to Speak episode?
Well,
there's a certain Tom Green movie I haven't mentioned yet.
Oh god.
Just wait for it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. So I have a few recommendations too. I wasn't sure how equipped I was to talk about this topic, but apparently I've actually seen quite a few movies from this era. I mean, it's a massive era, right? It's like after Silent Era and all the way into the 60s. I mean, it's kind of hard not to have seen a few of these just from the mitosis of like pop culture referencing these all the time. It's almost like people have seen the Twilight Zone. They're just not consciously aware of it. That kind of thing. But I have a few recommendations first. Of course, a few Billy Wilder films I really like. This guy's just done
man,
Sunset Boulevard, excellent movie.
Double Indemnity.
Talk about Double Indemnity. The Apartment.
And, yep.
The old one or the new one?
I'm gonna say the old one.
Broke into the old apartment.
And of course, Some Like It Hot, which is a really fun.
Oh my God, Evan! Please watch Some Like It Hot. Actually, a great trilogy. A great trilogy would be Some Like It Hot, Tootsie, and then Mrs. Doubtfire.
There you go.
Oh, right.
The Men in Drag movies.
It's like the
Men in Drag trilogy.
The Drag Queen trilogy.
Oh, Gene Krupa's in Some Like It Hot. Very nice.
I'm a man. Well, nobody's perfect.
Spoilers. Cut that out.
He's not gonna.
Well, actually, funny enough, I brought up Miss Doubtfire, Sunset Boulevard. That's where the reference the "I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeVille" comes from.
Yeah,
it's a very well shot movie. Speaking of Something Like It Hot, I think it's the only movie I've seen with Marilyn Monroe. I haven't seen 7 Year Itch or Niagara or anything else.
Yeah.
7 Year Itch is a good sort of follow-up afterwards.
That's right. I think
some
that might be the only one I've seen too, actually. Wow.
Some prefer blondes. Like I don't know.
It's funny.
It's not that I'm avoiding it. It's just like I don't know.
Mrs. Doubtfire also had a reference to Psycho, where it's like, Norman Bates!
Which is what spoiled it for me.
Oh, yeah.
She was in All About Eve too.
Yeah. So Mrs. Doubtfire spoiled Psycho?
For me, yeah.
That sucks.
On the train with Something Like It Hot and Tony Curtis, there's one Tony Curtis movie I absolutely love, and I'm not sure if any of you have seen it, but it's called Sweet Smell of Success.
I know of this.
No.
Yeah.
This is one of the angriest 1950s movies I've ever seen. It's just so sleazy, and it's set in New York, and you really feel the heat of the intensity. And it's like every character is an asshole, and they're trying to fuck each other out of their livelihood. It's just great. It's a really, really slimy movie. Sweet smell of success. Got like Tony Curtis and Burt Lancaster at each other's throats. Yeah. Another one. I'm glad you guys really liked Hell's a Poppin'. I'm glad when I mentioned that movie, we all watched it together with our significant others, and we all had a really good time. But one crew that I really want to give a shout out is the Marx Brothers with A Night at the Opera.
Yes, A Night at the Opera is one of the best Marx Brothers films you can watch.
So these are the guys that Dr. Jones, the senior, should have sent his diary to.
Sure. In any case, I also really liked Duck Soup, although I do prefer Night at the Opera. Everyone, and then there's At the Circus, of course, and Animal Crackers. But honestly, I like it. I think Night at the Opera is my favorite out of the bunch. Yeah. And we mentioned a few John Wayne movies, but I also really liked High Noon. I think Gary Cooper's character, Marshall Will Kane, I think he's a very strong lead role, where it's like he doesn't want to fight, he wants to have a peaceful existence, but unfortunately his past comes back to haunt him.
Ooh, Grace Kelly's
in this. And he has no one to help him along the way. Yeah, she is. She's great.
Hitchcock is in love with her.
As well as... yeah, and Lee Van Cleef, a very early role of his before he became the bad. And I really have to recommend this last one. Have you guys seen The Night of the Hunter?
The Night of the Hunter?
I know a 30 Seconds to Mars song called Night of the Hunter, but that's completely different.
Oh my god, I'm surprised. This is
Shelley Winters.
You guys want to know a movie that basically inspired Sideshow Bob. This whole movie is about this corrupt priest who marries these two children's mom.
And the rakes they made along the way.
And he kills her, and then tries to go after the children because they're the only witnesses. And it's just this awful, like, tense chase scene of a movie. And it's actually directed by
Charles
director who
Laughton,
only made one film.
Laughton?
Yeah, this is the only film of his that he really made, and he was an actor at first. And, he hit it right at the park. There's a lot of really intricate shots and really delicate scenes, and it's really, really tense and suspenseful. I almost wanted to talk about it, but
Lillian Gish was in this too.
And Robert Mitchum, just so goddamn creepy in this. Like, he has like tattoos on his fingers that say love and hate, and he's just like, it's the power of God fighting, and then he wants to wrestle, and he does like a hand.
Sideshow Bob borrowed that trait too.
Yeah, no, Sideshow Bob is I am surprised none of Simpsons fans relate this character to Sideshow Bob, because the similarities are eerie. Yeah. Even the likeness of Robert Mitchum. Anytime I see him, I just think Sideshow Bob. But I should go on to my picks now. I feel like I've gone on.
No, that's German for the Bart the.
The Bart the.
Thank you for these recs.
But Cody mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. These are. I had never even heard of some of these, but they've caught my interest.
I've heard of A Night at the Opera, but like, actually, side story. I think in my grandmother's apartment or house and all, there was a Groucho Marx shaped like chair. Like, it looked like on the back part where you sit, there was Groucho Marx. So that was kind of a cool thing.
I should. My first pick of the night. Cody kind of spotlighted these when I mentioned The Invisible Man, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention James Whale's Frankenstein, as well as Bride of Frankenstein. I kind of like to consider these all part of one.
You gotta put them together. Yeah, they work really well together.
I know.
It's like one of the quintessential Universal
I like them
monsters.
both so equally. Like some of these Universal movies, I watch them and they don't really hold up that well. I think The Mummy is kind of shitty.
Yeah.
Dracula, well, Bela Lugosi's good in it, but it's not very scary.
Oh no, dude, the cinematography in Dracula was like incredible for its time.
For its time, yeah.
I like Karloff as the Mummy. Okay. I like Lugosi as Dracula. I think it's like Frankenstein and Creature from the Black Lagoon as like the top tier.
You know what's funny? Veronica hates horror movies, but somehow I managed to convince her to watch Creature from the Black Lagoon. Probably because Shape of Water was like her first date movie. So
I thought it was a horror movie.
She thought it was kind of silly. But
I'm telling you,
or
if you want to get her into this genre, pick the tamest
You
of
gotta
the
pick
tame.
the silly ones where,
pick the silly ones. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think Frankenstein. I'm really just kind of soaked into its atmosphere more than anything because it's he doesn't as the monster like Karloff. His presence is so like it's electric. I just love the way he can be so still and imposing with just his eyes and his facial features, and his look is just. I mean, it's pop culture incarnate, really.
Yeah.
It's
But I
alive.
also
It's
really,
alive.
really love. Yeah, I was just about to mention, I love Colin Clive in this role. Just the grimacing looks that he gives in the very opening scenes where we're seeing him conduct this experiment. I'd say that whole laboratory sequence is just like amazingly put together. It holds up really well. And yeah, there's a few elements where everyone gets it mixed up. Like they think Igor's in this movie, but he wouldn't be in there until like the third movie. Son of Frankenstein. Really, it's Dwight Fry as Fritz. That's the kind of Kremlin guy that helps him out. And Dwight Fry, I like him more in Dracula actually. His version of Renfield, I still love it when he's like down in the bottom, just cackling away like a maniac. That's Dracula. Moving on to Bride of Frankenstein. This movie's a whole other beast. I love how weird it is. I love how kind of silly it is at times, where he'll just kind of stand there and people just be like, "Ah!"
It's probably
just because he's standing.
It's probably like the first great sequel ever.
Probably one of them, yeah. It holds up just as well as the first one, and I love Dr. Pretorius.
Is he the blind guy?
Such a delicious. No. That he's the rival scientist.
Okay, well I like
He's the rival
the
scientist in the White
subplot
Club.
of like the monster bonding with the blind man. That's a really
Yeah, the hermit. Yeah, that was a good scene. I like how he's learning how to talk.
Mhm.
He's like, smoke, good. And then he shows fire, like, "Rawr, rawr." Yeah, because whenever the monster makes a sound, I don't know why, it kind of makes me cackle. Like when he's like, the woman in the first movie, she's like getting ready for a wedding, and he just kind of stalks into the room. She turns up, ah! And he's just like, "Rawr." This makes a cat noise. It makes me laugh. I don't know. And the windmill sequence in the first movie.
Replace Frankenstein grunts with meows.
There you go.
Oh wow.
But that windmill sequence in the end of the first movie, it's so tense. I love how
Yeah.
iconic the shot of the burning tower is.
I saw it in the theater
And the second
actually.
movie- Oh, did you? How? Just a throwaway?
They released some oldies back in the day. It was when it was during film school. I saw it here in Toronto. It was the double feature. It was both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein,
Very nice.
just back to back. And I remember the whole theater died laughing, and it took me out during when he horribly drowned the little girl by just picking her up and tossing her in the water. And it's like the most
That's not really
it's the most tame looking thing, but everybody was laughing, and I'm like, "Fuck you guys!" But inside, I'm like, "Okay, I can kind of see why it was funny." Because
It's a sad scene when you really think about it, because the monster feels remorse. That's the thing about him. Like, unlike other monsters, like I always like how the creature is like really kind of empathetic at times.
Yeah.
Because like, well, I mean, there are moments in Bride of Frankenstein where he just straight up fucking kills people, but like
Mhm.
other times where it's like, oh man, he didn't ask to be brought back to life. None of this is on him, and he's so confused, and he's always chased by villagers and all that. It's just such a painful existence.
The people
That's why I
are
like
the
the end.
real monster.
Bom bom bom. We belong dead. Yeah, if you haven't already, I'd recommend watching both these movies. I think they're honestly like some of my favorites in the Universal catalog of monster movies. And yeah, much like Cody, I gotta admit, I didn't pick anything from the 40s. I mean, it's just not really one of my favorite decades of film, to be honest.
Nah.
But I had to pick at least one Stanley Kubrick film from his early sector of his career. And one that I always love is Paths of Glory.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good one.
This has been on my list for a while.
You haven't? Yeah, you own it, Evan. I'm surprised you haven't seen it yet.
Just because I own it
another
doesn't
war
mean I've
movie.
seen it.
Oh, anti-war. Okay.
I thought we watched it together, but yeah, it's a World War I movie, one of the earliest actually, and it's just this really awful scenario where like the army has to go through this trench scenario where it's a battle of attrition. None of them have a lead, and many of them actually flee, like they go AWOL. And so because the plan was just to like burn men, really, it wasn't really they had no intention of winning that that battle,
Mm.
but still they decide to pick 3 men in the infantry to be punished and put on a death trial. And Kirk Douglas is the man who has to basically pick these men, even though he was one of the first, one of the only people who stood up and said this plan is stupid and it's going to get a lot of, and it's like just going to kill most of our men. And it's a very, I mean, it's for the time, I'd say it's a very grim movie, and it has like a lot of moments where it's like it shows people with the 1,000-yard stare before that was even a commonplace term, and PTSD, because they thought you were just cowardly if you had PTSD, but it shows that in a very, very
another
light.
movie I wanted to talk about that is okay. Just I want to throw this out there, not to distract. But I know Patton technically doesn't qualify for this category because it was made in but it was shot during the Golden Age, but released right after it. So, but yeah, Patton
kind of a tail end thing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Patton dealt with a similar phenomenon where, like, remember how Patton slaps the soldier who has
guy,
PTSD,
just
and
PTSD.
Yeah.
No, that was a good scene too.
Yeah.
One thing I really like Kirk Douglas. I love his commanding performance when he has to run across the battlefield and he's just so tired and dirty. It really shows like the grime of the trench warfare. I mean, later movies like 1917 would definitely show it in a much more graphic extent. But one sequence, I mean, we gotta talk about his monologue at the end where he's like being stripped down by his commanding officer. And he's just like, all I need to say to you, sir, is that you're a sick, degenerate old man. And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again. And he just completely, because he's so collected throughout most of the movie, but this is like the one time where he really breaks because he's so sick of the hierarchies and how these men really just treat human lives like they're nothing. And but my favorite scene in the entire film is actually the ending. And I hope you don't mind if I talk about it.
Oh man, the ending is the best part.
Where basically there's all these men who have just survived battle. They're in this tavern, and one of the people who are on stage are like showing this German girl that they found, who's kind of like they're like, hey, let's see what she can do, and she's like there to entertain all these Americans and Britons, and she's like scared. And you don't know what these men could do. They could do horrible things to her. And she's also played by Stanley Kubrick's future wife, Christiane Kubrick. And she sings this beautiful German song.
The Faithful Hussar, I believe it is.
The Faithful Hussar, that's the name of the song, yeah. And she starts singing it. And even though it's not in their language, they all sort of quiet down and they're really taken in by the song. And it moves them to tears because a lot of them know that they're going to go back to the front and likely get killed in battle. And like it's it actually moves me to tears too. It's one of the most effective endings I've ever seen from this era.
Yeah.
And it's a shame we haven't talked about Kubrick too much in this podcast. I know Deep Fat Fried did an excellent deep dive into his work, but this one kind of gets slipped.
Have you seen all of his films?
I have seen all his films. I also really like The Killing.
The Killing,
I really like The Killing, too. I was tossed between these two, but I think the ending of Paths of Glory sticks with me.
Paths of Glory is, like, probably my favorite film from Stanley Kubrick. Like, before he came into his own later on, before he kind of, like, developed his style.
Kubrick was Kubrick,
before Kubrick was Kubrick, basically. Like, the Paths of Glory is probably my favorite one just during that time when he was figuring himself out. And, it's so well shot for its time. It's really well written. And it's like one of the better anti-war films.
Depressing.
For its time. Oh man, and it pissed off the French government so much when it came out.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
I'll bet.
Because they are not portrayed in a good light at all.
Again, that was at the time when that was one of the tropes a lot of writers like to go to.
Yeah, cowardly French. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and like the things they would put the Allies through. And I would also give a shout out to The Killing because I think it's a very, very fun heist movie.
Maybe I've been meaning to watch that because, like, I don't know, like after this, everyone would say like, "Oh, Doctor Strangelove's the best." Of course, 2001, A Clockwork Orange.
Well, like, his later career,
the
much like
stuff. Mm-hmm.
So it's like Hitchcock. Like he got more sophisticated as the later his career went. But it's also kind of nice to look back at his early films when he was kind of just a director for hire, and he was still doing really solid
Fear and
stuff.
Desire.
Although I'm not. Yeah. We
Killer's
don't
Kiss.
talk
What
about
would
that
happen
one too
if the
much.
killers covered Kiss?
We don't talk about that one too much either as Cooper fans. But,
Brandon Flowers
even-
sings
even-
Detroit Rock City.
I'll be honest, I'm actually not even that big on Spartacus.
Oh well, it wasn't even his film. It was
really.
totally studio meddled with. He doesn't consider it his movie.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
Spartacus.
too long for me.
Well, just for the record, the movie
and Kirk Douglas got him hired on that too.
Yeah.
It was the movie Trumbo, which is a movie I love from 2015.
I know.
It establishes like the writing side of, because initially like that was the comeback writer for famed screenwriter Dalton Trumbo, but he got blacklisted thanks to the House Un-American Activities due to his affiliation with the Communist Party of the United States, and basically that was like the big comeback for him, and it was kind of like a signal to the end, like the ultra right-wing movement to basically just police people for having opinions like was fading, because at the time President Kennedy apparently saw the movie, because Kennedy saw the movie and was like, oh, it's good, I liked it, I'm just having fun, like, and no political statements, just I'm just enjoying the movie. Then the press ran with it, said, "Oh, the blacklist is kind of over." So,
Mr. Mead, will this be on the exam? I have to write this down.
I'm glad I don't have to relate to that.
Yeah, Spartacus it's an important movie for sure, especially regarding the blacklist. But
speaking of controversial ones,
it's not really one of my favorites.
The one that came after that, Lolita.
Oh yeah.
Ooh,
Talk
that's
about things not aging well.
That's a daring movie. Oh my god.
For the
A
time.
little tame by today's standards, but still the implications are there.
Yes.
So my last one I picked because it has influenced two of my all-time favorite movies, Repo Man and Pulp Fiction.
Oh.
I'm dead serious. I like how Cody's expression changed. It's just like, oh. And this movie is called Kiss Me Deadly, directed by Robert Aldrich.
What?
And then the guitar solo. No, the guitar solo's from the song from the 80s.
Everyone's checking because I don't think anyone's seen this. But yeah, the way it is, it's based on a Mickey Spillane novel. And it's basically like this detective story. It's very film noir, post 1940s boom of film noir. And it's honestly like kind of ahead of its time in some respects, because you have this character named Mike Hammer, and he's a total fucking bastard. Like, he drinks and drives. He treats women like objects. He, like, I don't know, he's so brutal in his interrogation methods. Like, it's almost like if you guys have seen Sin City, this is where a lot of the characters are kind of inspired by. Like, you see him
like some Frank Miller leanings to it.
Yeah, Frank Miller would probably love the hell out of this
I'm
movie.
sure he
he's seen it
did.
many times.
Thanks, the Spirit.
Yeah, and it's like he like shoves his victims down like flights of stairs. He like crunches people's fingers into desks, and he enjoys doing all this too. Like, he doesn't mind. And it's kind of a MacGuffin story too, much like Maltese Falcon, because there's this suitcase, and it contains something of severe importance, and he's drawn into this story because he almost hits a woman on the side of the road, and he picks her up, and they both get kidnapped by these people because she knows information about this case, and when she's killed, he's kind of drawn into this to investigate, and it starts a whole odyssey of like people he encounters down along the way. And I don't know, I think it's shot very cool. Like, that's such an amateur way to say it.
What are you, Zack Snyder?
There's a lot of I think it's really cool that this guy like is violent and sex, But anyways, but like the use of shadows. Like, there's one sequence where he's like fervently looking for a note that he wrote on his desk. He walks into the room, and it's all dark on this side of the room. He turns the light on, and there's a guy just sitting there waiting for him, and he's completely oblivious as he's like searching for notes. And there's like this really nice shot that I don't really see anymore, where they must have propped the camera on the back of his sports car, and it just shows him driving and looking around as he's like pulling through this like gas station and just driving super fast. I don't know, this movie's got verve.
Do you want to know
I kinda
something
dig it.
crazy about it? It was shot
What?
less than 3 weeks.
That's efficient.
Wow.
That's pretty efficient, yeah. I mean, some of the acting is a little corny, I won't lie, but like at the same time, like I just have so much fun with this movie. I
Well,
really want to watch it again.
I think part of it as well
And
is it's got that
it's
pulpiness, you know? It's
oh, it's
gonna
pulpy
be
as
over
hell.
the top.
Yeah, and it has an ending that I can't spoil, but I can see why it's inspired to these like movies. It's such a weird twist of an ending that I don't want to spoil it, but
I feel
when you
like
see
there's
it, you'll be
another
like,
movie that the ending also inspires in a way. A certain brown hat wearing, whip wielding adventurer.
Indiana frickin' Jones. Yeah, possibly. In any case, I know you guys haven't seen this movie. I often like to end these episodes with a little bit of a deep cut. So if you haven't already, please check it out. I personally would love to have a copy of it. I'm still searching for one. And it's like, it's it's on Criterion. Yeah. In any case, I really
Oh wow,
enjoyed
it
this one quite a
is.
lot.
Okay. Well, I mean, if some of these are, I'm sure this is always the Criterion channel.
I gotta say, Criterion has really opened my eyes to a lot of
Time
these
for another
movies.
plug.
I own
Plug.
I
Very
own
much. Criterion.
12 Ring of Men on Blu-ray
Oh, it's not
Criterion,
on
Me too.
streaming. Never mind.
and I think there's another one. I have to look at the
I own 0, but that
collection.
could go. That number is ready to shoot right up.
They're kind of expensive, so just watch it
Yeah.
when you get into it.
Yeah.
I think okay. I know I have the player, which is a Criterion, but I don't. I think I may have the Criterion of that. I don't know. I just remember I bought the player a year ago.
But there have been some great
Cody?
recommendations tonight.
Yeah, Cody, what were the 3 movies you wanted to recommend?
Oh right, yeah, from the '60s, The Great Escape.
That's a good one.
I mean, someone gonna Maggie. Just say Maggie,
disclaimer.
whatever.
Disclaimer: great movie. I'm not going to deny that, but bastardizes history. Like there were no Americans in that situation; they were all Brits.
Oh, I mean, sure, yeah, but I mean, just it has probably one of the greatest climaxes, and it's just the whole movie's
like
tension.
I said, I'm not denying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other movie, it is probably my favorite feel-good movie I've ever seen in my life, but it has to be Mary Poppins.
Of course.
I was
The
one.
penguins, the penguin stuff in general, live action animation
Yeah.
coexisting like that.
Oh, it's amazing.
Very well done.
I love it. And
Very well.
we talked about it earlier, but The Graduate is just, yeah, it hits. Great soundtrack, great performances. It's my favorite film from the 60s for sure.
Oh, that's nice. Well, this was fun. I'm glad we each had like our own tastes that were displayed in this episode. I think it's really nice.
It kind of brought me
We
back.
mentioned so many classics.
It kind of brought me back to the times that I was trying to seek out these classics. Like it was mostly in high school. Like I had not only one but 2 books that I forget the names of them, but it was basically like
You had 2
movies you
books?
gotta watch before you die kind of thing. And
1,000
I love those
movies.
kinds of like the
1,000
albums ones are
movies
great.
you must see before you die.
something like
Yeah,
that, yeah.
AFI Top 100.
And I just remember going crazy trying to almost just be so by the book on watching the classic films. And there's something special about the Golden Age where it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's like so much like a time capsule, but it's really interesting to watch this film because I automatically will just wipe away everything that came after the film's release and just judge it as like a film that came out at its time on its merits and its technicality. And it's always just a very special thing. I still got like a couple of dozen movies on my watch list on my letterbox from the Golden Age I still want to pick at.
On that note, maybe by the time we get to our 100th episode, I'll have. So there's a classic movie from this era that my dad. Okay, so has anyone seen or heard of The Razor's Edge?
I have not heard
no.
of it.
Okay. Apparently, every time my dad talks to me about this movie, it gets kind of warm and fuzzy because he likes to talk about how that movie always the main character in that movie reminds my dad of me. So I feel bad for not having seen it yet, but something's telling me I should probably check it out soon. So yeah.
That was great. Maybe
Yeah.
sometime on like Turner Classic Movies or one of the TV channels, some of these movies might be on.
I remember seeing a list on Turner
right.
Turner Classic Films. It was like the 4 greatest films of all time, and it was like, I think it was like Citizen Kane, The Godfather,
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction, and Freddy Got Fingered. There we go. Now we can end the night.
Thank you. It is an award-winning film, so I mean.
Oh, it swept the Razzies
You know
for
what
sure.
A24 should do just
Swept
for
the
fun?
Razzies.
Dip a hot dog in gold and have that alongside all the Oscars.
Hang
Call it a
with some
golden
string
weenie
and
award.
Play piano, old timey
A golden
piano.
Oh.
Like that.
Alright, thanks everyone for joining. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Take care.